Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. Did you know that you receive messages daily from spirits on the other side? And I'm not just talking about any any spirits for that matter. I'm talking about spirits often referred to as messengers of God, guardian angels, the higher self, or to simply even put it, spiritual helpers. Now, I wanted to begin this episode by starting with a fact to kind of set as a preface for all this. And that is to say, if you are listening to these words spoken to you right now, then you are psychic. I don't care who you are, where you've come from, what your beliefs are. It doesn't take away from that fact that you are psychic. And it is because of what you are. A soul with a physical body. A soul that's connected with all things. You've ever heard the phrase, one with all things? It can sound a little woo-woo and all types of things, but trust me. Trust me on this. It is a lot of truth there. And so, as a psychic, you pick up impressions from the environment and from your spiritual helpers. And now, interestingly enough, to give a bit of a background, when it came to psychic abilities, I used to think that it was something that was reserved. It was reserved for like a special few. In other words, like if you were born with it, either you were born with it or you weren't born with it. You didn't have it. You didn't get picked in the lottery, how I saw it. And so at that time in my soul searching, wanted to learn more about this world, I was reading books, and that was one thing that came up where somebody said, oh yeah, everybody's psychic and everybody can develop their psychic abilities. And so that right there was like it was like my driver, my motive, my curiosity, that I just really wanted to understand more on what that was about. And so over the years, I've been honing in and working on my psychic abilities after I had connected with the Wayshores College, because that's pretty much where it started when I went to my first workshop. And that first workshop that was instructed by my good friend Richard, it was titled Expanding Your Psychic Sensitivity, which was from a series of listening to my heart, and just discerning and taking those steps, just following my heart to get to that point that led me to that, to be at the right place at the right time. And so by having practice over the years, I've come to understand something to help give you some perspective. So maybe you're like, oh, okay, psychic, okay, well, whatever. Psh, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. Or maybe you resonate. Maybe you get it. Maybe you understand, like, yes, someone gets me. Great. So psychic abilities, really, you could also say, are intuitive abilities, right? And I think even to boil it down more simply, two things. There's the first part, which what I think psychic abilities are simply just communication. But to add another layer to that, there's also the awareness component. So when I asked you, like, did you know that did you receive messages from spirits on the other side? I could ask you, are you aware of the messages you're receiving from spirits on the other side on a daily basis? And it's that important piece that's very, Very important, because let's take this route here. So let's look at the word communication, right? I say psychic abilities are communication, and I did a little word search in the dictionary because a little intellectual here because we have our intellectual nature, right? We have our intellectual nature and our feeling nature. And so communication is defined as exchange of information, a means for sending, a means of sending or receiving information. Now, we are familiar with when it comes to information, we're looking at through the five senses, typically, right? When it comes to relating with the natural world and with other people, both our intuitive abilities, it works in it works with the natural world, but there's like the extra sensory perceptions, or ESP has been a common term referred to it, where we're looking at uh, our spiritual senses. You could say spiritual gifts, as they are mentioned in the Bible, particularly where I'm referencing, and I'm sure in the other versions as well too, is the American Standard Bible. But I'm sure this is mentioned through other translations as well too. It's a common theme. And so when we're looking at information, it's like we're looking at intuitive information, and the means of the sending and receiving information. That's when we're talking about energy, the things that what can you sense, what can you sense when you're in a particular environment? What is there anything that you're aware of? Because the more I find practicing being more aware of what I'm picking up through the medium of the mental body, the mental thoughts, the mental state, our mind, excuse me, that's when it gets really interesting. And so when it comes to psychic abilities and honing in, allow me to kind of share first, because again, because one thing I've recognized when it comes to psychic abilities is the importance of discernment. How can I discern my thoughts from other people's thoughts and feelings, from messages from my spiritual helpers, discerning from your messages from your spiritual helpers? And it goes like this, just to give you a little bit of some reference point, because it really does help, and it's what's been pretty crucial for me to begin to identify and really get into that discernment piece of what's me and not me and where it's coming from. So all of us have four means of communication, four types of perception. So they are our means for sending and also receiving information. Again, like intuitive, spiritual information. And I'll start first with the gift of prophecy. The gift of prophecy is that part that can sense the future. It's the part that has concern about the future in each and every single one of us, right? We all have, like, all these spiritual gifts we have, right? Um, and so, talking about prophecy here, there is this perception that's through a clear cognizance, or this inner knowing, where it's like, have you ever been in a situation where you know about something, like for sure you know, like with conviction within yourself, but no one's told you anything? Or perhaps maybe you've had someone, your phone was ringing, and before you even picked it up to see who it was, you knew before at that moment who it was, without even seeing it, the caller ID. You ever had that experience? Or perhaps maybe you've had a dream and it felt very vivid, and perhaps there were parts of it, or some parts of it, that actually came true. You ever had that experience? So it's that, again, that inner knowing piece that, for me, that and I say me because, so we all have these spiritual gifts, but each of us operates highly out of one gift. And that's something that we chose in in our own communication system, in our own unique communication system. So that's something that's like my primary gift. And so that's one, right? I want to keep this moving here. And then the second one is vision. Vision, or clairvoyant or clairvoyance is the is having those inner pictures, that mental picture in your mind, right? Like I know with this, how I relate with this experience is like to kind of give it some perspective here. When I'm, let's say, I'm getting ready for work and I'm looking for something, I can't seem to find it, and I'm feeling a little bit, maybe a little frustrated, and I'm just like, okay, where is this thing? So I take a moment and I'm just like, okay, relaxing myself and just allowing, okay, just patiently working with finding what it, like maybe like my keys, for example. Sometimes I'll get pictures that just pop into my mind, a specific area in my home, and then I'll go to that spot and I'll check it out. And 9 times out of 10, in situations like that, it's exactly where what the thing that I'm looking for, and the picture that to connect the picture to what I saw, my mental picture. Boom. Okay, that's where it is. You ever had that kind of experience? And so, and this is also this part too, that sometimes when, like, you know when I unfocus my vision sometimes, or even just like I've had situations where I can see people's aura. Again, it's like it's not so much of the physical, but it's more so of the mental, right? The mental picture that can just, and so that I've had experiences like that before with the gift of vision, and it's super super useful. Or even just like perhaps maybe like there's a symbol or picture that's been deeply ingrained in your photographic memory, and perhaps you have an experience and that picture just pops into your mind, that whatever symbol that resonated with you. Perhaps maybe you had something like that, because I know I have. So that's vision. Third one is intuition. Specifically, because I know that intuition is like an umbrella term, but in this context that I'm going to share with you, is the clairaudient part. It's the clear hearing. It's that small, still voice inside. Or oftentimes, how I relate with it is I'll hear music. I might hear a melody over and over, a specific part, or I might even hear a melody with a chorus repeating over and over and over again. Oftentimes, I know that's have been messages from my guidance. And sometimes, like, I'll even wake up first thing in the morning and I'm already hearing a song in my head. I'm listening to it, and there's like it's playing a certain part over and over again. And I know those have been experiences where it has been messages from my team of spiritual helpers. And so, and then this is so there's like, sometimes, and I'll explain a bit about another way. And the next gift down the line is feeling, right? So this sense is sensing through a feeling or a sensation, and a sensation not necessarily felt from, again, from the five senses, but it is like a spiritual sense that feels similar to what you would feel if it was happening physically, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you ever felt like a burning sensation, but you're not physically burning, right? Or it's just, I don't know. It's just my way of just like how I experienced that bit. Or sometimes maybe you put on something like some clothing, some clothes. Maybe you got a new hat or some pair of shoes or something. Or maybe you got a bike or something. And when you put it on, it just feels good. There's something about it that helps you feel secure, maybe grounded, or just something really like good, right? Satisfactory. Like, this feels good. So again, so from the top, so prophecy, vision, intuition, feeling. So I hope I kind of gave you a basic understanding of these gifts. And there are a lot of qualities and a lot of ways to kind of even expand on these gifts, but not for this episode in particular. But I figured I just wanted to give you the basic understanding for the purpose of this particular episode. So when it comes to working with these gifts, because these are the avenues. Again, when it comes to the messages, when it comes to like even the inspirations, you know, inspirations are in some shape or form messages from our team of spiritual helpers. Not all the time, but a good chunk of the time, at least in my own experience. And so looking at it, looking at these four gifts with the basic understanding that I shared is like have been a good reference point for me to kind of this to figure out, if you will. Because again, like we have our intellectual part that serves the purpose to analyze, dissect, to really understand what's going on. Like it's a very needed thing, but it's in terms of like working in balance, working in harmony, because our feeling part or our heart, that's where our intuitive sense is. You know, it's the feminine part, the intellect, the mind. That's the masculine energy. To even take it a step further and to explain a bit further on that, you know, it's and so when it comes to the discernment practice, that is so vital because that's something I've come to understand once I got involved with the program and I learned to adopt some good practices for myself. I found that it's very much necessary to discern, because we're picking up a lot of things all the time, and to this day, it amazes me how super sensitive I am, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, I know you have a good degree of sensitivity to yourself as well too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been attracted to listen to this podcast, in my opinion. And there's always something where I'm like, where I think it's me, right? Because I've always been growing up, like I've grown up with this somehow this understanding that if I think it's mine, it has to do with me, or that somehow the thoughts or feelings I have define who I am as a person, when in fact they don't. Newsflash, they don't. They don't define it. They're experiences. They're things. It's like think of yourself as like a radio tuner. You know, you turn into different stations, different frequencies. Sometimes I come across a station that's like, oh, this is great. Okay, I like this station. Let me stay tuned into this. And other times you may come across a station where it's like, whoa, what is this? Okay, this isn't all right. No, this is not constructive. This is kind of negative here. Not this ain't working. And so it happens like that with our own energy. We're always picking things up, and it's like something that's it's and it goes back to when I mentioned being one with all things. It's because of we're so connected to one another. That is something that it's a mechanic, if you will. It's a mechanic of the spiritual realm. When we're looking at it from the perspective of playing the game, right? And when you're looking at the natural world, but then looking at the spiritual world, this is a key component here. But at least what I've come to understand. So going back to the challenges here. So because that's something that when it comes to discernment, that's where there's these beautiful challenges that comes up when you live a certain way. They always comes with the challenges, and that's okay because we're all here at this big beautiful this big blue planet Earth. That's nothing more than a school for our own spiritual evolution. Like all the stuff that are here, everything, warts and all, are there for us to help us further ourselves and advance spiritually. And it's very much important that we grow in alignment of our with our own pace, of course, because everybody has their own timing. Because as a good friend of mine once said, is that if you're not growing, you're dying. And that was a beautiful thing. That was pretty awesome. Um, and actually, just to even kind of plug in a little shameless plug there, that was from like my recent interview with well, not recent, but it was a while ago, but fairly recent, with my when I interviewed one of my good friends and colleagues and mentor, Kathleen Ellis. If you look at some point in the history of my podcast, you'll find it. Um, and I believe it's called the Navigating World with Spirit. You know, where I got that little nugget of gold there. So if you're interested in like kind of listening to that, you know, feel free to check out the history of it and finding that it's the only interview, at least at the time of recording this podcast, that I've done so far. So little plug there, little shameless plug. But going back to the challenges, so there's challenges when it comes to working with our intuitive gifts, because growing up, I've always been taught to think before I act, think before I act, think before I act, which is good, right? That's good sound advice, right? You know, it's just like use our brain to just figure things out and and things like that. But at where I'm at now at this stage of life, I recognize that there's a missing piece to that. What about the feel? And I'm not talking about emotions here necessarily. talking about what is it that I'm sensing, feel, that intuitive senses can be concrete. It's really working with the facts. What's the situation? What am I picking up? Am I sensing a person who feels distressed or feels like they have something on their mind, despite that perhaps on the physical they're putting on a smile, acting like everything's okay, yet I can pick up this sense that there's something going on with this person. You know what I mean? Just to kind of give you that sense of that discernment piece. Because you just can't tell everything from just pure surface level five senses type of thing, because there's more to it than that. Very often. Very often. And so this the intellectual our intellectual nature is the part that can really make it difficult, because having been grown up being taught to use our intellect and this and to lean into that, when it's just one part of our one nature to us, one part to it, but we have two. So there's this need to have this balance, the harmony, so that rather than just think and act, it's rather than think before you act, it's feel, think, act. To kind of explain that for a little bit, it's like feeling, like what do you sense? What's coming to your awareness? What can you be? What do you sense? Again, I keep saying it, but it's like it's a simple process. And then you think, and then once you kind of get that sense of it, it's like then you use your thinking mind to kind of like move the pieces around to discern, okay, what's this, to help to make sense of that, right? And then once you have, then it's like, all right, now to take action on that. At least that's the flow, how it works. When it comes to being in our own rhythm and flow as a soul, feel, think, act. Just to give you that little bit there of what's going on there, what I'm trying to get at with that. And so, some of the dangers when it comes to that: one, literal interpretation. Our guides will communicate with us using symbols very often, or they'll communicate in ways that are very nuanced. And I've had my fair share of things where I've tried to like make it a literal interpretation, because our intellectual nature wants to understand, wants to like box, wants to like analyze like the crap out of things. But again, like, but this is where we have to move with balance, where we have to like where the intellectual part has to do its part to just simply organize and nothing more. It's simply a tool for our feeling part, our soul part, to just to channel through, if you will. That's why it's just like, even like when you look at yin and yang, that's part of like that symbolism right there. It speaks back to that, to our dual nature, or the duality of living in the material world and in the spiritual world at the same time. So their interpretations, I would be very cautious of that, because it's not always what it seems, right? And so another aspect, another thing, another challenge that I've definitely dealt with is has a lot to do with likes and dislikes, or even just like making something out of nothing. Where in essence, what I mean by that is like I'm projecting my own intellectual bias rather than listening to what it is that's being communicated. And this is for me, and this is what's helped me develop my own personal listening skills a lot, by doing this kind of practice as well too, because that's an art in of itself. And just to even put a perspective here, communications in general. Let's be real here. Let me get this straight, straighten out. Communication and listening, it's a lifetime skill. There's no destination when it comes to that. And that's the same thing to be said about our intuitive abilities. Yeah, there's some that are really pretty good at what and are connected with their intuitive abilities, but they've probably done the work in their own, you know, they've probably done the work to themselves, but that isn't to say that nobody else can develop theirs. So it's like, even then, it's like there's always room for growth there. Again, it's not about destination, but it's all about the journey. Something that I really want to emphasize here. So I mentioned earlier about, okay, at least the part about the literal interpretation that could be very, very deadly here. And I think when it comes to like perceiving, right, when reminding you of the prophecy, vision, intuition, and feeling, right, the inner knowings, inner pictures, inner voices, inner sounds, right, or the feeling. A good question to ask to move in the direction of discerning is, what does this mean to me? What has meaning for us? What has meaning for you personally is super important, and something that your team of spiritual helpers are attuned to and are aware of, because they use what meaning has for you to be able to use the outer world to communicate with you spiritually, if that makes sense. This is why, we live in two worlds and they're interwoven, and it's like, and they work together in a lot of nuanced ways. So in this example, it's kind of showing that component of it, where it's like, what has meaning for you, right? Like, say, like, maybe perhaps, for example, um I find myself when I'm like riding my bike in the street and I'm at a light and I look up in the sky, I see like a flock of birds just flying, and there's something about seeing a flock of birds resonates a lot with me. I get the feeling of like teamwork. I get the feeling of just this being a part of something bigger. There's this sense of like moving in the same direction with other people with like minds, progressing, right? Again, I'm applying the flock of birds as that physical symbol, right? And then the meaning right there, that's for me, right? And oftentimes, like, my guidance may use that to kind of remind myself that, hey, you're a part of a team. Like, I'll even get chills. And that's another surefire confirmation that you're not alone, by the way. If you ever felt yourself getting chills or goosebumps, when it's not cold, mind you, when it's like nice warm temperature, maybe at home, or even if you're outside in the warmth, if, assuming of course it's in the summer or spring, right? I don't know if you ever felt chills in those moments, because I have. I get chills very often, and I pay attention to when I get them, because I'm telling you, that's a way of kind of gauging when your spirit guides come close to you, because their own energy is like, they have a higher amount of energy, like almost twice that of our own. I forget what the scientific amount, what it is, but and that's why when they come close to us, they give us a surge, a jolt of energy, because of their frequency. They're kind of basically at a higher frequency, higher vibration than where we are. And so I hope that at this point, I'm giving you some ideas perhaps to help you, to really explore with this. Like, if this is something that you're genuinely curious and you want to know more about, well, here's a couple things that I can share. Well, first and foremost, I would say, on your own and doing your own thing, like, I think it's a good practice, if it's something you genuinely care about, to really explore all this in that way, like an exploration, something to have fun with the process. Because yes, we work with spirit guides, we have spirit guides working with us, but it's not a heavy, serious process most of the time. Even though there are some moments when it can get serious. But like our guides, I've come to understand they're like very wise children. That's why, when I look at children, and why we resonate so much with kids. A lot of us, not all of us. But when you look at a child or a baby, it's like that glow, like they're in their pure feelings. It's a powerful teacher of that childlike part that's in us, that has never left us, but perhaps has been suppressed as we aged, as we grew older. And our guides are like wonderful, at least I know my guides, speaking for myself, have been wonderful teachers to remind me and to help me connect with my childlike part, my inner child. Very, very different and distinguishable from childish. I'm talking about childlike, the part that expands, that's very curious, that's open. Whereas the childish part is very, pretty much the opposite, very closed, hard headed, stubborn, narrow minded, closed, resisting, change, resisting, evolution, growth. And so, and if you're someone that really, cares about that, I have some resources in the show notes, and yeah, I can connect it with the Way Shores College and its programs, because that's where I've learned the tools and techniques for myself to work on my intuitive abilities that I try to practice every single day. And that could be a stepping stone for yourself as well, you know. And then also, in the show notes too. Let's see here. I guess I'm gonna start. I'm looking at my notes, and I'm kind of going towards the end here. And I guess I was just gonna mention it. I kind of I'm a little bit ahead of what I wanted to talk about. But like, so one thing I'll say is like, I'll add on. So all this talk about inspirations, right, or just messages from the other side. When it comes to your own team of spiritual helpers, I don't know if I said it, but before, but I'll say it now, or again. That when it comes to communication, specifically with guidance, with spiritual helpers, spirit guides, it's simple. It's simple. And you have been working with your own team up to this point in your life. Maybe not as often as you'd like, but definitely been working with them at an unconscious level, much like a lot of people. They work with their guides even at an unconscious level. The difference is with the program, with my situation and where I'm at, is because I'm working with them on a conscious level. And that was through receiving the education and having experiences, regrouping, reflecting, making sense of it all, refining all that beautiful stuff has put me in this place where it's like I work with my guidance in a conscious way, and it's pretty freaking awesome. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have that company sensing that no matter where I go, where I'm at, who I'm with, just understanding that there's that support and that's that help 24/7, always available, on standby. It's like there's a saying, uh, on high with nothing to do are spiritual helpers. And so if you're interested in working with them on a conscious level, like how I am, then I'll defer you to the show notes here where I'll put some resources here. And I'll have a section where you can connect with facilitators, instructors, consultants with the college, myself included. My information, I'll give you a link to the webpage that'll take you with all our facilitators, because we have facilitators all over the world. And you can find one that's nearest you and just to connect and perhaps get you set up for like a consultation, because there is a one-on-one consultation where you get to discover your unique communication systems. Again, remember when I mentioned prophecy, vision, intuition, and feeling, which ones you operate out of, have an understanding about that particular gift, and then of course discovering how many spirit guides you have with you this lifetime, and if they've been, and if they, whether they've been, and whether or not they are male or female, like their energy, right? Get to actually connect with your team and learn a technique to get clear confirmation from them as well too. And so if that's something that's very much, if you're interested in and want to explore and try, check out the show notes and check out a section on it's just on New Spiritual Horizons facilitators. I'll make sure to kind of use some of the verbiage there for you so that you can find it, and then it'll take you to a page where you can look by country. I mean, we're not available all over the place. We're all over the world, but there are certain countries that we have on the page. So, but nevertheless, you can pick what resonates, and you can do this consultation via Zoom or some kind of video call service, streaming service, and get the profile done as well too. There's no limit to how we can be of service. So, and like I said, and I'm there too, putting a little plug there myself. My contact information is on there too. So if you're interested in resonate with me, I invite you to to come check. Send me an email or something. Let's connect and go forward from there. Love to see how I can be of service that way. So just wanted to give you that practical sense. So if you're listening to this at this point, giving you some direction if you want to, free to explore, right? At your own, whatever feels right for you is right for you. It's not my responsibility. It's not nobody to tell you how to live your life. You live your life how you want to, because it's in your own autonomy, your own power, your own responsibility to be your own leader, inner leader. And so kind of plugging that in there. And so, and talking about understanding discerning messages, right? And maybe you might be thinking, oh, like I feel like I don't get anything, or how can I tell? Like even like sometimes I have my days where I feel like I feel disconnected from my guides. Again, mind you, I've spent years practicing here, and I'm giving you this feedback here. Again, it's about the process and refinement, and it's a skill. It's a skill. And sometimes, like I said, it's not about being perfect. Asking the honest, like intuitive, and people who practice this kind, will do this kind of work. They'll tell you too. It's like it's not always perfect. It's not always peachy and great and all this stuff. Like there's always life be happening, life be lifing, as they say. But it's something that has been a source of empowerment, and it's something that has helped me feel more secure within myself, though, I will say, and why I think it's worth it, why I continue doing the practice, why it's basically my way of living, how I show up everywhere. There's a quote from the Bible, from the book of Job, chapter 33, verse 23, and it goes, "If a man have an angel to whom one would listen once in 1,000 times, the angel would show him the way of uprightness." I think about this particular Bible passage when I find myself in those moments like, man, I haven't recognized or picked up any messages from my angels. When that doubt comes in. Ooh, that doubt, that dirty doubt. I remind myself of this passage because it's like our angels send us messages countless times throughout the day. You could say hundreds of times throughout the day. Like, yeah, like a whole lot. Like, I kid you not. But all it takes is just to recognize one message from your spiritual helpers. One message. Uno. One. One. And then to take it a step further and to take action on that. That right there is powerful and will take you so far. All it takes is one message. Even one, like I definitely have moments and days where I've just listened to, and I recognize one message, recognize a moment when my angels have been backing me. Like I'll give an experience here before I kind of fully wrap this up. Like I remember I was using the restroom, and I was like had my phone kind of doing my thing, just like taking care of business, right? and and so I was like kind of been thinking about a package that I was just like anxiously waiting for, hoping to get here because there was important stuff in there. I was getting paranoid about it getting lost in the mail or something. And so I was checking my phone to see like what's the status, and I had saw that the order I had made was already delivered, meaning it was already left here at my building, my apartment building. But I didn't get any messages because typically when I get that kind of confirmation, within minutes and stuff, there's always like within a short period of time, I'll get like a text message because we have a locker, a package parcel system where we get notified that the packages arrived here, and I didn't get that, and so I was just like kind of wondering. And in that moment, when I was like looking at it, I heard in my mental hearing, right? I didn't physically hear, but it was like in my mental hearing, like clear audio. And I heard, and it was a soft kind of a voice too. I heard, "Go check." And so I was like going ahead and just like getting all my stuff together. Okay, wrapping things up, wrapping up business in the in the bathroom, and then making my way over to the leasing office. And went and stopped by the area where they sometimes leave packages. Like if they don't leave them in the lockers, they may leave them outside. Uh, Especially like if it's within the same day, like if it's after business hours or something, or because leasing office, I mean, between when they're there, when they do their coverage, and then when package people come, there's always going to be some packages that get left out for a brief period of time before they eventually get put in the lockers and stuff. So it wasn't there. So then I ended up going to leasing offices. This was like near the closing time as well too. And so I was like talking to this person. She was helping me out with some other stuff that came up, and then she offered to help me with the packages and stuff. Uh, when I told her about the situation, and so she took me to the place, and then to help look at the locker, see if it might have gotten there. And then, funny enough, I've come to discover that my package did arrive, and it was put in a locker, but it was put under somebody else's name. It wasn't under my name. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, shoot, okay. And then she unlocked it. She was able to find in the computer, find my package despite the little hiccup there. And then she gave it to me. And then I thanked her, went on my way, and then boom. And it's like, had I not followed on that moment when my guidance gave me that nudge, then that would have probably complicated a little bit on that package situation. Eventually, I probably would have gotten it, of course, or maybe not. But nevertheless, that's one particular moment that, for me, that that where I know that I'm not alone. I'm not. It's like this isn't like this is real stuff. This is as real can get, man. It's just I can't really prove it. It's just something that you have to experience and develop that awareness, and just develop that awareness and recognizing. And then when you start to recognize, it's like you start to notice the magic that happens behind the scenes. Because that's what it is when it comes to working with my guides. When I work with my guides, it just feels so magical. Especially when things have worked out in such a beautiful way. It's just amazing. And so, and I want to say this, the part that I mentioned earlier about feel, think, act. When you getting the inspiration, the message, and just up to the point of like, okay, taking action. So like when I followed through on my inspirations, it has led me in places that I never would have thought would have been possible. Things that haven't unfolded the way that they would have, that they have, or wouldn't have if I hadn't followed through on those inspirations, on the awareness piece of that, where I'm at the right place at the right time, you know. And it's like it's just listening and being aware of all that. When I was just starting out, when I was curious about all this, that was how I was able to find my way to the people of like minds, people I need to be with, to connect with my soul family, my soul tribe, because I followed through on the inspiration. And honestly, in my opinion, following through on inspiration, that's the key right there when it comes to manifesting. You know, manifesting is just simply put of just following through on inspiration. It's not being passive and waiting for things to show up on our front door, or or waiting for something to get delivered to us on a platter or something. Although I will admit there have been experiences I've had where it felt like it, so I'm not denying that sentiment because there's some truth to it for sure. But it's like you and I are creators. We're made in the image of God. We have the capacity to forge our own path ahead, to carve, to forge our own life, to create the kind of life we want for ourselves. We have that power. You have that power. And knowing that you have people on the other side who want to make that a reality, your true heart's desire, I mean, that right there is an unstoppable force here. To be connected with your guides, that right there is, oof. I can't stress enough, at least for me, like when I got the consultation at some point in my journey, because I got the consultation as well starting out. Now I'm at a place where I can offer it to others. But when I was starting out, that changed my life. I try not to be very dramatic or anything like, even though I can be sometimes. Uh, but but in all fairness and sincerity, like it's something that really has changed my life, and my life has never been the same ever since. And it's been nothing but blessings all throughout, you know. And I highly encourage you check it out. Check out that page. Connect with a facilitator to get the gifts and guidance profile done, and to connect with your team of guidance and discover your own style of communication, your psychic abilities, if you will. Because that right there, that has helped me navigate this world from that place of having cultivated my own inner security and inner peace. So if you want to be your own psychic, rather than relying on somebody else to do readings and stuff for you, although it has its place, I will admit. But if you want to have that kind of for yourself as well, not just leave yourself out, connect with us. Let's see how we can be of service so that you can be your best spiritual, intuitive, psychic self and show up better in your life and transform all your relationships. And I'll leave it there for this episode. I feel like there was a good amount, and trust me when I say we can take this always a step further. And in fact, there are classes and courses that the college offers, the Wayshores College, where you can even deepen your understanding and, in a lot of ways, grow your knowledge, but then also have the experience part, the experiential part that's also important as well to solidify and hone your skills of the spiritual gifts and is the opportunity for that as well too. So again, a little something that you can be a part of if it calls to you. If not, I wish you the best. Again, this isn't for everybody's, but it's for those that truly want and need it. So if this calls to you, I invite you to check it out. Check out my show notes. Check out the resources there, and I may even reach out. I may even leave like a little contact info for myself as well in the show notes. Maybe for this particular episode, um, here for those that perhaps want to reach out directly to me, or maybe you have an inquiry or something as well. I'll leave that. I'll leave my contact information for the show notes for this episode only, and then yeah, feel free to reach out to me that way too. So, and again, without further ado, I hope if you made it to this far through my rambling and talking about life, about communication, about inspirations, and all that things, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you for sticking with me. And through this entire episode, I hope, and I trust that you got something out of it for yourself. Take what you need, leave the rest. And this has been another episode of Spiritual Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.